Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are, whenever you're watching this. This is Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be about my top 10 favorite bronzers, and I'm going to rank them for you. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today's video is going to be about my top 10 favorite bronzers, which I'm going to rank. And I struggled putting this together because I realized that I did a video like this about 2 years ago, and I just haven't kept that many new bronzers around, or maybe I just haven't tried that many things, but I was like, I just think my bronzer collection isn't as much in flux as other parts of my makeup collection. So if you've heard me talk about bronzers before, then I'm pretty sure you can see some of these coming. But spoiler alert, I did dethrone my favorite from my last video. In case you're new here, hi, my name is Maaike. I live in the Netherlands. I like to come on here to chat about eyeshadow palettes, essence and couture reviews, and getting the use out of my makeup. And because I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, I deem myself a snow angel. So if you would like to join the Snow Angel Club, then definitely click subscribe down below. So yeah, top 10 favorite bronzers. I'm going to start with my least favorite one and then go to my favorite one. I'll include some swatches and some close-ups so you really get a feel for these products. And if I don't forget to do this, I'll make sure to also swatch them all 10 side by side so you can see the differences in undertone. And technically there are 11 bronzers here, but there's one bronzer that I've tried in recent years that I loved so much that I own it in 2 shades, which is rare for me. So that's why we do actually have 11. So let me get started with bronzer number 10. And this one, OG followers of mine know that the Soap & Glory Solar Powder is one of my all-time favorite bronzers, to the point where I've hit pan. I love this thing. I love this thing to death, but it has been discontinued, so I can't really recommend it anymore. At some point in time, I might be able to use it up, especially the lighter half where the pan also is. The other side does have a bit of hard pan, I have to say, so that's a bit of a shame. And it also seems like the 2 powders have a different texture to them, meaning that if you swirl your brush into this, then you will pick up more product from the lighter side than you do the darker side, which works for my fair skin. This was one of the first bronzers I ever found that really worked on me with my fair skin tone. It's not the one that really kicked off liking bronzers for me. That was another one that's still coming up, but yeah, this is one that I have had so much use out of over the years that I've hit pan, so it had to make an appearance in my top 10 favorites. But it is at the bottom because it's no longer for sale, and I'm gonna covet this for a while. Now, the bronzer that made me love bronzer, the Makeup Forever Pro Bronze Fusion Bronzer. I can no longer read the name on the back because it's disappeared, but this made me realize that I need a yellow tone bronzer. Up until this point, I had tried bronzers that were far too orange, far too muddy, far too red, whatever, and I felt that if it had a yellow undertone, it was more neutral on me and not too stark of a difference. And this is also a sort of cream to powder kind of formula. It's a very different one. And this one, again, you will see with a lot of my bronzers that I love, that I've used them so much, that the packaging just looks atrociously terrible. And this keeps shrinking every year I show this to you. I haven't used this in a while. I always loved going back to this in the winter time, so maybe I should just do it again before I do my spring declutter to just try this out and see if I still love it as much. But yeah, this is a throwback for me. Like, this I purchased, and it was the first time in my life I had a bronzer that worked. Another bronzer I love, but that I also realize I need to use again, is by Becca, of course discontinued, the Bali Sands Sunlit bronzer. That's what this is called. This is such a nice fair tone bronzer. I believe this came in a couple of shades, and I bought the lightest one, and it works really well for me. It has a bit of a sheen. This used to have a wavy pattern. The wavy pattern has completely disappeared. So as I mentioned, a lot of these are going to look pretty terrible from like an aesthetic point of view, because of a lot of the times the packaging has just been completely ruined. But yeah, I think that maybe November or December I need to select this for I shop my stash. So I hope someone in the comments can help me to remember that I need to remember that I have this, because I pulled this out of the drawer. I was like, yeah, I love this thing, but I haven't used it in so long. I need to go back to it. Also here in the number 7 spot, there is a new to me product. And that's this guy. It's not even technically a bronzer. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Film Star Bronze and Glow, which I finally got to try because they finally released it as a travel size. I felt the original version was far too big. I had always been told that the highlighter was nothing special, so if I was gonna buy this, I would be buying it for that contour shade. Because technically it's a contour, but it's so light and has a cooler undertone, and it works like a bronzer on my fair skin. I have the original Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush bronzer, and it's so yellow compared to this. I like this better. I like this one better. So yeah, now that I have this, it's going to take me a while to use this up, but I loved it, and I can use this shade actually as a bronzer, and it works really well for me. I love the formula. If she can release this as a single pan, I would be happy. And now we're getting to like core favorites territory. I think I've used most of these in Shop My Stashes in the past year. Fenty Beauty, the Sun Stalker in the Sun bronzer. Yeah, this buddy is looking very worn. This is one that I think, I think I tried to hit pan on it, but I did have a bit of heart pan that I scraped off, but now it seems to be coming back. I don't know. But yeah, this has a nice dent in it, especially like down here in the bottom. This is one of my favorite bronzers. The reason why it's no longer in the top 5 is just because I have newer things that really stand out to me in my collection. Is this a good one that I want to go back to all the time? Yes, which is why it sort of is just outside of the top 5. Like, this is not a priority. I love this shade. I love the way this works on me. I love the way this looks on me. If I were to ever use it up, would I repurchase? A definite yes. But Fenty Beauty is also a little bit more difficult to get for me because I can only get it online or through Sephora, which I have to go to Paris for. So it's a bit cumbersome to get, which is why I decided to tip this one just outside of the top 5. Top 5 time then. This was in my Shop My Stash just the other month. I think I kept it in for like 2 months straight because I fell in love with it again. The Balm Take Home the Bronze bronzer in the shade Oliver. And this guy, I've been trying to hit pan on this for like 2 years straight, and I just don't seem to succeed. Not because there's so much product in here, but I feel I don't need much product to make this work. This is one of the deeper bronzers in my collection, so when I use this, it's usually around like late summer, early fall. That's when I feel this works for me the best. It is, again, more of a yellowy undertone, and it's just really, really stunning. I love this. Last month, this was the only bronzer in my entire everyday makeup drawer for my Shop My Stash, and I loved on it hard, and I almost didn't want to take it out because I was like, you know what? I want to make sure that I do also get some use out of other bronzers I love, so that's why I ended up putting it back into my makeup collection. I'll go back to it again next year, I'm sure. Currently in the Shop My Stash, and what I have on my face today is this, the Nabla Skin Bronzing Sun-Kissed Effect Bronzing Powder. This is in Ambra, which is the lightest shade, and this is that gel to powder formula as well. Love this thing. This is so good, and it's really nicely bridging the gap for me between the Balm bronzer and some of the other things that I've got going on here, because we have some things coming up that are even lighter than this. This is so stunning. It's not shiny, but it also isn't fully matte, and because it just has great blendability, it works really well on me. It just has a really stunning undertone, and I have been loving it. Yeah, like the first time I put it on again, I was like, oh yes, this is why I love you. Number 3, we're in the top 3, and this is one of in my previous bronzer video that I think I did 2 years ago, this was my favorite bronzer. And it still is a favorite, which is why it's still in the top 3, but I do feel that my other bronzers that I have higher than this give me a bit more. And I'm talking about the Kiko Radiant Fusion bronzer in shade 01. I believe it's called Tan. This is so light that it works for me in the winter time. And that, at the time I did that previous video, this was my number one, precisely for that reason, because I had always struggled using bronzer in the winter time. I was always too pale. It looked horrible on me, very muddy, but this was a game changer when I tried it. And that's why it ended up in the number one spot at the time. But I have found some other things that I feel have even nicer textures than this one. And that's why this is still a really good one. I highly recommend it, especially if you have fair skin and you struggle with bronzers. Definitely look into the Kiko one. This comes in a ton of shades as far as I remember. And this 01 shade is just, it's especially like, I'll come back to this in like January, February time, I'm sure, because it's really good. Number two then, Dior. This is the Dior Forever Natural Bronze Powder Bronzer in Tan Bronze 04. Now this looks much darker than a lot of the bronzers I've just shown you. But this, for some reason, the undertone of it is what makes this bronzer so great. The Dior lettering is already starting to wear down, which tells you how much I love this. This bronzer, it's described as having a cool undertone. So it's got a bit of pink. I mean, you can't really see it in the viewfinder, I'm sure, but when you put this on, something just happens. And then I also find I can get away with a slightly darker shade that, you know, this kind of works really well for me in like the spring, summer season. That's like the best time of year for me to use this. I mean, dead of winter, it's going to be too dark, but it's quite a universal shade for me. And that's one of the things that I like here. Undertone wise, it's not as yellow. And I feel that that's something we're seeing in terms of like bronzer development, is that we get more different undertones in bronzers as well, which I think is direly needed, because orange, red, or like pinky bronzers or yellow tone bronzers, those tend to only cater to like a certain number of people. And I think that cooler undertones have definitely sort of been missing out when it comes to bronzer shades. And therefore I appreciate that the Dior line does have that, and that because of this formula and the way it applies, it really doesn't go on like this shade when you put it on your face. It shears out beautifully, blends perfectly, has the right undertone, much better than any of the bronzers I talked about so far. And that's why it was my number two. But my number one beats the Dior simply because it's so affordable. This is one of the cheapest bronzers I've ever tried in my entire life, and I love it to the point where I have both shades that it comes in. This is the Catrice Holiday Skin Luminous Bronzer with macadamia oil, and the lighter shade is Summer in the City, and the deeper shade is Off to the Island. Now, the darker one was the one I bought first because that was the only one that was in stock, but it was at the end of summer that they launched these, so I was like, I might as well try it. Might as well try it. And it turns out to be my perfect bronzer for the summertime. And this is super duper light. Let me show you how light this actually is. This is the Kiko. And that's the Catrice. The Catrice one is even lighter than the Kiko. So guess what? Winter season, this one, because they have that oil, again, they have this creamy-ish texture. Reminds me a lot of the Nabla, but it's not quite that. This is closest, I feel, to something like the Butter Bronzer from Physicians Formula. I declare that because I now have these two. And my packaging broke. But yeah, these are lovely. They do smell really strongly. So if that's something you don't like, then maybe don't go for these ones. But yeah, these two shades, and if I want to, like if I just had these two bronzers, I could do bronzer for the rest of my life. Like year round, all occasions, because if this is too dark, I can just blend a little bit of this over it. If this is too light, I can deepen it up with that. Perfection in a bronzer, and it's under €5 at the drugstore. I cannot recommend this enough. So that's my top 10 favorite bronzers ranked for you. I really hoped it was helpful to see what some of my favorite bronzers are. I really hope you enjoyed watching today's video as well. So thumbs up the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more by me. I make several videos a week on here. So if you'd like to stay tuned for more, then definitely click subscribe. And then I hope to see you in my next video. Take care, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.